Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of the Truth to Lies podcast. Thanks for spending a few moments with us today. If you like what you're seeing, please take a moment and hit that subscribe button. It would really help us out. Today, I want to discuss another letter that was posted on the Wells family website. This is allegedly a letter written by Summer's father, Don, who is currently in custody for probation violation. Has nothing to do with Summer's disappearance. It is simply a handwritten letter that the news stations and the website, the Wells family website, are reporting came from Don Wells and is a letter to Summer's kidnappers. Keep in mind, last month, Don Wells also issued a handwritten letter, and it was titled A Letter and Prayer for Summer. Okay, so we have the two letters. When I Googled this current letter, this second one, I saw that the news stations were reporting that this letter was written by Don, came from the county jail, and it was in fact a plea from him to the kidnappers. The letter is posted on the Wells family website, and I want to show you the letter. So here's the letter that is posted on the website, the Wells family website, and that they're saying came from Don. Now, when I get a letter like this, if I have, especially if it's a handwritten letter, if I have a previous letter, I'm obviously going to compare the two letters and see if it's the same type of verbiage and look for consistencies or any inconsistencies. I want to see that the two letters are consistent and congruent with each other. And I want to know what the priority of this letter is. What's the purpose of writing this letter? I think it's very appropriate for a parent to address the kidnappers if their child was kidnapped. I think it's very appropriate. And there's certain type of language that we expect to hear in a letter like this. If you haven't seen what I posted on the first letter, go back and take a look at that after you watch this video. You'll find that pretty interesting. As I look at the verbiage in this letter, there's some things that stand out to me, come to my mind. What I want to do first is I want to read this letter in its entirety. And as I read this, I want you to think about what is it in this letter that stands out to you. After we read the whole thing, what is it that stands out? What do you remember about it and why? That's what we're looking for. And so what the letter says is, to the person or persons responsible for kidnapping Summer, not only have you broken Summer's heart and taken her away from her mother and father, whom love her very much, but you've ruined her chances to become educated, ruining her life. You have also broken the hearts of her father and mother and brothers, and in the midst of all the commotion, ruined our lives. You see, the public blames us. I don't know if will, spelled W-I-L-L, ever find employment again. Nobody will hire my wife, and I've been fired from a job I've had for 13 years. We may end up losing everything. He's putting exclamation marks, whoever's writing this. When you took our little girl, you took our very lives. Why don't you give our little girl back before God's wrath descends on you? You've broken many hearts, and more especially an innocent 5-year-old girl's heart. One day, God will hold you accountable for this crime unless you do something to make this right. Please do the right thing and turn our daughter over to the authorities. We're begging you with all our hearts, please do the right thing, Summers, and it's signed, Summer's father. Okay? So that is the letter in its entirety. As I read this letter, it seemed to me that the plea in this letter was obviously to turn Summer over, but why were they issuing the plea? Why was the plea being issued? And the answer is, and I think a lot of you caught it, in the midst of all the commotion ruined our lives. You see, the public blames us. I don't know if we'll ever find employment again. Nobody will hire my wife, and I've been fired from a job I've had for 13 years. We may end up losing everything. When you took our little girl, you took our very lives. Why don't you give our little girl back before God's wrath descends on you? That is in relation to their lives being ruined. How much of this letter is a plea for their lives to not be ruined because of employment issues versus care and concern for Summer? Now, I know that someone watching this is going to say, well, wait a minute. He mentioned that a plea for Summer, and let me address that. He said, you've broken Summer's heart and taken her away from her mother and father, whom love her very much, but you've ruined her chances to become educated, ruining her life. This is something that has finality in the language. You've ruined her chances at becoming educated. In other words, it's done, it's over with. And what that tells me is that the person that wrote this knows or believes that Summer is not going to come back. She won't ever have that chance at having an education. Okay? The plea is not there for Summer. The plea is for them to be able, for the public to view them in a better light so that they can be employed, that to have to soften their hearts, for the public to soften their hearts for the Wells family, for Don and his wife, so that they can be employed. The language still is void of concern for Summer. What do we know that's going on here in the current moment that they're experiencing? Well, employment issues. Where's the concern for Summer, what she's feeling, what she's experiencing right now? It's not there. It's her chances of being educated, which I guess that's can be a concern, but my concern, if it was my little girl, is what she's experiencing right now, if I have a belief that she's still alive. Now, this is coming from the father, and fathers have a tendency to process a little bit quicker than a mother would, okay? And so what we really need to do is go back to the very first interview that they gave with the news media to see what their linguistic disposition is towards her at that time. And that's going to be my next video, so stay tuned for that. But everything after that first interview has been slightly contaminated because they have received criticism. They've been asked questions by the police. They've been asked questions by the media, by Dr. Phil. They've been interviewed by experts, and they know what everyone else is thinking. And so when they issue something now, it's typically in response to what they believe everyone else is thinking about them. So it's a little bit contaminated. That's why if you want to know what the really is going on in their mind, you want the purest snapshot of what's in their brain, what their perception is of Summer, you go back to the very first interview that they gave, and assuming that they were asked clean questions, and a clean question is simply, tell me what happened. And their response to that will be a clean statement, and it will accurately reflect their perception of summer. And so that's going to be the next video. I can't wait to get that one posted for you. This letter here is a plea for the return of employment. Okay, that's what this one is. That's what stood out. And as I read through the whole letter, that's the part that stood out. And I know that a lot of you are thinking, yeah, that stood out to me too. Why is it that the other part about the things that he said about summer aren't really sticking that much? It's because they're unnecessary, they're repetitive, and they're not needed. It's already assumed that a parent would love their daughter so much and that their heart would be broken. It's just one of those things that we already assume, and so we're just going to go from there. And we expect the language to reflect that in the plea for taking care of Summer at this point in time, right now, what she's experiencing, what she's going through, make sure that she loves swings, she loves being outdoors, so make sure you get her a swing, and make sure that you take care of her and that you're loving her, and by all means turn her over, bring her back to us. Please find it in your heart to bring her back to us. We love her, we want her home, and I know we have a little bit of that, and that's natural, and I expect to have a little bit of that, but we don't have the majority of that. That's not what is the overall plea to the kidnappers. It's, you've ruined our lives. We're not employed, and the public blames us. And so we want our lives put back together. And if you don't believe me, well, we love her. That's why that's there. If you don't believe me, we love her. You've broken many hearts, and more especially an innocent 5-year-old girl's heart. What this letter reminds me of is not only a plea for employment, but it's a plea for themselves. And that's what the overall petition to the kidnappers is. It's a plea for themselves, not necessarily Summer. There's a little bit of that in there, and I expect that everything that they issue from the get-go, from after the first thing after that first interview, will be in response to what the perception that they know the public has. And so it's going to be a bit contaminated. And they learn. They're on social media all the time, and they learn from shows like this, and Chris McDonough on The Interview Room, and several others. They've learned from being on Dr. Phil. It educates them. Each time they do something like that, or they see something, they watch this, they're going to be educated. And I expect that the next time that they issue something, it's going to be a little bit different. Now, I want to take a moment. I want to compare the two letters. Here are both letters that were posted on the Wells family website. The one last month in all print, and the one this month, just a few days ago on the 18th, it was posted, and it's all cursive. You will see that there are marked differences in the two styles of handwriting. Now, if you didn't know it, besides being a statement analyst, during my law enforcement career, I also received certification as a forensic handwriting analyst. And I can tell you that you don't really need that certification to tell the difference in these two styles of handwriting. There are several things that we look for, and we look for consistencies and inconsistencies in the styles of handwriting. We look for at the size of the writing, we look at the spacing, we look at the slant, we look at the baseline. There's many different things that we look for, and it's apparent that these are two different styles of handwriting. Okay, there's many aspects. In the one on the left, the first one, we have it's erratic handwriting. We have capitals where they don't belong. We have low T crossings. We have difference in spacing. We have stunted lower zones, meaning the Y and G stems and things like that. They don't come up and arch up and fill the whole stem. And at times even the slant gets goes from one side to the next. And in the letter on the right, the handwritten letter, it's actually very consistent. We have some hiccups in the handwriting, where they spent extra time grinding things in or retracing. That is either a pen that is not working quite right, or it is some anxiety, some angst, something, their mind is paused at that point in time. They're thinking more about that, rethinking it, they're not getting their thoughts together, things like that. We look at the totality of things. And the style of handwriting is obviously very different. And one of the things that really stands out is the signatures. You have Don Wells' signature, and he almost obliterates his own name. And then you have the one on the right, Summer's father, and it's legible. They had a few hiccups with the F crossing at the top. But, and speaking of crossings, look at the T crossings in this cursive letter. All of them are very high versus the T crossings in the printed letter. Most of them are fairly low. Okay, we get a few that are a little bit higher, but most are low. Okay, that's a marked difference. The T crossings tend to be very consistent when you have two different styles. And I know that some people print one way and they will write cursive totally different way. That's why we look for these consistencies, and it's just not there. It's not there. And so when I read this cursive written letter, the first thing that popped in my mind was, besides the priority of the letter being, we want our life back, we want our employment back, please help us with that. But it reminded me of a show from the 70s. I know I'm dating myself here, but some of you might remember the Welcome Back Kotter show. And Welcome Back Kotter had to do with Mr. Kotter was a teacher at a high school in a very rough neighborhood, and he used to be a student there, and he returned to be a teacher, and so his students are very rough. And this is John Travolta's one of his first shows that he did, and he's one of the students. And there's a student in there with John Travolta, and in the show his name is Epstein, Juan Epstein. And Juan Epstein is known for his notes, a note from his mother. And so Juan will typically have if he knows that he's got a bad grade or he didn't finish his homework, he'll show up with a note. And the note will give an excuse for why he didn't do it. And it says it will be signed by Epstein's mother. And so it's pretty funny. So you can see that why this letter reminded me of Epstein's note. It signed Summer's father. And it just resonates that same vibe of someone writing this letter for Don. Now, it may be that Don had some say in this letter, that he dictated it, what he wanted to go into it. But it's very rare for when a letter is dictated and rewritten by somebody else, that they don't put their own spin, their own perspective, their own thoughts, their own feelings into it, and their own wording, and it often gives them away that it's written by somebody else. And so if this was indeed written by Don, I would expect a signature or something to say Don Wells, but Summer's father just reminded me of Epstein's mother. So I would say that whoever posted this letter is trying to help out the Wells family. I'm sure that, I'm not sure, but it could be that some of it's dictated by Don Wells. No doubt there's some of the language that is familiar and consistent with how Don would speak. Whoever this is definitely has the same mindset as Don, and so you're going to get a little bit of the same type of verbiage, especially if he's speaking to him on the phone and then writing this letter out. So I'm curious to know who actually hand wrote this letter and signed it Summer's father, just like Epstein's mother. That's my take on this new letter. Like I said, the next video I'm going to post will be about the first interview that Don and Candace did with the media, and that's where we're going to get the true perspective, uncontaminated perspective. It's contaminated a little bit because by the time I don't think they did that interview for, I think it was a couple weeks, may have been even longer, but it was a few weeks later. They wouldn't speak with the media, and they finally did. And it was obvious from what Don said, and I'll cover it in that video, but it's obvious that Don is addressing some things that people posted or people said to him. And so I'll address that. So it's a little bit contaminated, but it's the first thing that we've ever heard from Candace especially. And so it's going to give us the best perspective of their perception of a Summer and that situation at that point in time, very, very close to her disappearance. And I can't wait to get that one posted for you. Look for that. In the meantime, thanks for spending this time with us. Please hit the subscribe button. Let your friends know about this channel, especially if they're true crime junkies or law enforcement investigators of any type. We have great training. Go check out our courses at truthtolies.com. Those courses are fantastic. They are cutting edge. I know you're going to like them. Everyone that's taken those online courses raves about them. And we have in-person courses for law enforcement and professional investigators. So go check out those courses. Again, thank you for the time. One of the reasons that I post these videos for the general public is that I know that a lot of cases are solved by people in the public, There's a case I'm going to talk about coming up. It's a cold case homicide. That case was actually put together by a civilian in an entirely different state who saw things posted from two different states and put the pieces together. And it made a huge difference. It ended up being the puzzle piece that solved that case, that got the traction that it needed. And so I know that happens frequently. The more that you know, the more that you understand about the language and how much it actually reveals, the more you're going to be able to do. And so for all my true crime people out there, you guys really can be key in solving these cases. And so keep up the good work. Tune in next time. Keep your language positive. It really does make a difference.